The very next evening, I need water. Holy shit. So, very next evening, as we continue on and almost finish this route, we had finally arrived at the village of my origin, the village of the Yukimura. Within it were the people who had been waiting my return for quite some time.
おかえり千鶴。ずいぶん久しぶりだね。まさかこの里でお前と再会できるとは思わなかったよ。
Father. A wave of nostalgia washed over me from seeing my father for the first time in 5 years. However, I was no longer the clueless girl I used to be, and I hadn't found myself rushing up to him happily.
こうしてここに来てくれたってことは、答えは出たってことだろうけど。どうする？俺たちと共に来るかい？
薫君から話は聞いているね。我々が再びこの日の本の支配者となる日が来たのだよ。共に新たな鬼の王国を作り上げよう。
Father. Something in Father's words rang eerily to me. It sounded as though he was more excited by the prospect of usurping power rather than their initial proposition to rebuild the Yukimura clan.
千鶴、顔色が良くないようだな。まさかお前、血を絶っているのではないだろうね。分かっているだろうが、お前の体はすでに落ち水によって作り変えられてしまっている。血を飲まなくてはたちまち正気を失ってしまうよ。
Father took a tone that reminded me of when he would admonish me as a child. I couldn't let myself dwell on the nostalgia because there was something nefarious afoot in his behavior.
何をためらってるんだろうね。せっかくだから沖田を殺して血を吸えばよかったのに。
そうだな。そうするべきだ。羅刹などいくらでも作り出せるのだから。
After Okita listened to them speak, he began to bark with laughter before turning to ask something of me.
千鶴ちゃん、どうしようか。君のためなら僕の命くらいあげてもいいんだけど。
Boy! I will not give up. Not until the very end. I made a vow to you, remember? We were either going to break the curse of the water of life together, or not at all. Losing Okita more than any mere serum could would undo my sanity and give me no reason to live.
そうだね。君はこんな馬鹿げた提案に乗るような女の子じゃない。
千鶴、まさか。
Kaoru glared back at me with cold eyes, refusing to speak lest he unleash his anger. If I were to guess, he was anticipating my answer even before I said it out loud. I confidently faced him and Father and stood tall. I cannot join the two of you. Kaoru let out a deep sigh.
千鶴、お前は血を分けた兄も故郷も育ての親も何もかも捨てるつもりか。そこまでして男を選ぶなんてとんだ薄情者だな。起きたなんてただの人間じゃないか。しかも病で近いうちにくたばる上、落ち水のせいで狂い始めてる。
Kaoru, don't you dare speak ill of Okita. I couldn't stand to stay silent as Kaoru shamelessly slandered Okita in front of me. There was a slight hesitation before saying this aloud before Father and Kaoru, but I love Okita. that does not mean that either of you mean nothing to me. But Okita has a special place in my heart. If I were to commit to this relationship, then it meant I needed to separate myself from my family. I want to spend the rest of my life with Okita. I have no desire for an army of furies or a demon kingdom. I have no desire to crave a life that comes at the expense of hurting others.
俺たちのやり方は間違ってるっていうのか。両親を殺され、里を奪われ、女鬼じゃないって理由で同じ鬼にまで散々虐げられたのに。俺の人生をめちゃくちゃにした奴らへの復讐すら考えるなって。俺たちは一生虐げられる側に甘んじてろっていうのか。
Kaoru. If only Kaoru had found someone who mattered to him like Okita mattered to me. This was all I could think of to soothe his anger. Or his rage, rather. But like all things, I suppose, this was only a naive wish. Even so, there was no way to convince myself that Kaoru was just in his reasoning. Kaoru, of course, continued his tirade.
お前らだけ何もなかったように幸せに暮らすなんて、兄さんはどうしても許せないな。
It seemed as though we became the targets of Kaoru's ire. Even though the same blood flowed through our veins, Kaoru and I shared no common goal or thread of life.
俺は俺の目的を果たす。たとえ可愛い妹を泣かせることになってもね。
I know, but that's why we...
力ずくでも君たちを止めさせてもらうよ。僕たちにも叶えなきゃならない夢があるから。
Then our two groups leapt back to make ground. Father, please, wake up. What gives you the right to kill so needlessly, just to create a world for demons? Even though our clan was destroyed by humans, we had no right or claim to something more than anyone else in this country. Deep down, I knew Father believed this as well. Father, you're a doctor. You spent your life helping countless others. Don't you remember how many patients you treated in Edo? All those times they thanked you?
それは
I knew Father could not attribute the evils committed against our people to every human. So, as long as he could learn to forgive, then he could continue to live in the company of humans. I know that humans and demons can still coexist peacefully. Just like how we used to live peacefully in Edo.
千鶴お前
I saw Father's eyes flicker. There was still goodness inside of him.
お前は本当に甘いね。人間たちとの争いを避けようとして、俺たちの一族を滅ぼされたんじゃないか。
So, what? If you keep this up, all you're doing is perpetuating the same cycle of violence. If, and only if, we were to wipe all of the humans from this country using the Furies, any humans who survive will come to resent us. Kaoru, do you want to create more orphans like us?
じゃあどうしろって言うんだ。俺一人が過去にされた理不尽な所業を忘れて我慢すればいいっていうのか。悪いけど俺はそこまで善人にはなれないな。前に言っただろ。強い奴が報われるんじゃない。正しい奴が成功するんじゃない。最後に笑うのはどんな時でも手段を選ばずに小ずるく立ち回ったやつだけだってね。
Kaoru took something out of his pocket. It was... The moment I saw him pull out a glass vial, I felt something shudder from deep within my soul. Kaoru! Kaoru merely grinned maliciously before opening the vial and gulping its contents in one deep sip. He clutched madly at his throat. Suddenly his hair turned white, and from his scalp I watched the thick horn raise itself. Why? Why? Why would you drink the water of life?
落ち道で鬼の肉体を強化するにはどれくらいの濃さが必要になるか確かめるのは簡単だったらしいよ。可愛い妹が実験台になってくれたからね。
What? Kaoru willingly drank the water of life just to obtain more power? Was that it? How could he be so unaware of the path to which he was now fully committed?
沖田が弱くないことは俺だってよく知ってるからさ。だからってここで負けるわけにはいかない。こんなところで殺されたら今までの俺の人生が本当に無意味になるからな。
Kaoru clasped his hands around his katana's hilt, drawing it in one swift motion. In return, Okita unsheathed his gift from Kondo.
よくわかるよ、その気持ち。もし負けたら、僕を捨てた姉上、そして僕を虐げた兄弟子たちや、僕を憐れんで見下した奴らを喜ばせるだけだ。僕も近藤さんに会うまではずっとそうやって生きてきたから。だからこそ彼女に同じ思いをさせるわけにはいかない。僕はこの子と生きなくちゃいけない。だから絶対に負けられない。それだけだ。
Okita! My heart fluttered at the sound of Okita's dedication played repeatedly in my head. It was a sentiment that I shared with him.
バカじゃないのか!
Kaoru growled angrily, throwing himself at Okita. Each clash of their blades produced bright sparks. Becoming a fury must have increased his strength to an unfathomable degree. Both his speed and the force of his strikes came with an increased velocity, and Kaoru swung madly at Okita. Okita, however, was able to dodge each of Kaoru's advances with ease, and he put distance between them.
たとえ俺に勝ったところでお前なんてすぐにくたばるよ。羅刹の力は寿命を削るって知ってるだろう。ただでさえ老害で残り少ない寿命があとどれくらい残ってるんだろうな。
Yet again, Kaoru flailed his blade wantonly, hoping to gravely wound Okita, but Okita evaded all of his strikes.
知ってるよ。だけど残り少ない命ならなおさら君に渡すわけにはいかない。
The electrifying rhythm of their fiercely contested battle made it difficult to keep up. Tension made the air thick with rot and despair.
次の一投で決めさせてもらう。死に損ないにこれ以上時間を取られるわけにはいかないからな。
望むところだよ。
Oh shit. Both of them kicked at the ground at the same time. In the space of a flash, each combatant struck the other. Okita was struck in his bicep, and blood flowed freely from the wound, spilling onto the ground below. This did little to stop Okita, however, and he returned the favor by slicing the middle of Kaoru's abdomen. Kaoru's body was scarred by Okita's well-aimed strike, a strange and disconcerting sight indeed. Oh shit. As we had expected, this fight was life or death. Rather than waiting for their injuries to heal, both men exploded a fiery resolve to see their opponents hacked into pieces until he no longer resembled anything human. Eventually, oh shit. Kaoru looked capable of fighting, if just a bit more. But Okita appeared to have exhausted every last bit of energy he had left, as he could barely stand.
それじゃあな、起きた。せめて最後は楽にあの世へ送ってやるよ。
Then Kaoru raised his bloody sword when... Kaoru! Don't! I refused to stay quiet, and I screamed out to Kaoru in hopes of stopping him. There's no more need to fight. Do you plan on doing this forever? Neither Okita nor I want to kill you. All we want is to cease the senseless fighting and to find a cure for the water of life.
うるさい、止まれよ。それとも起きたより先に死にたいのか。
After shrieking at me, Kaoru began to charge towards me. I had to find a way out of his path. His fury and his speed was beyond comprehension, and I had no chance to escape.
待て、Kaoru!
Okita tried helplessly to run right behind Kaoru, but by then Kaoru was practically arm's length from me. Then, just as I had embraced the thought of death, a body had flung itself frantically in front of me. A very familiar voice screamed right within earshot. Father? Father, the man who had raised me since I was a young girl, sacrificed his body, which was punctured brutally by Kaoru's sword. Father, you protected me. He said nothing. All he offered in response was the same stern expression I'd seen and known my entire life.
この邪魔をしやがって。
Kaoru, on the other hand, seemed merely inconvenienced as he kicked his foot against Father's body to extract his sword. As Father's body slowly descended towards the ground, I reached my arms to keep him upright. And then...
救いようがないやつっていうのも世の中にはいるんだね。憎んだ相手はいくらでもいたけど、ここまで嫌いになったのは君が初めてだよ。
In the very next moment... Okita drove his blade directly into Kaoru's heart with ruthless conviction. With that, Kaoru's body dropped to the cold ground. His eyes were empty, and as his limbs sprawled across the dirt, he looked incapable of standing.
救いようがないやつか。別に構わないさ。俺は生まれてこの方救われたいなんて思ったことはないからな。
Kaoru gazed lifelessly into the distance, letting out a pained exhale. And then quietly, he shut his eyes, for his life was over. Kaoru. Although I believe I had been prepared to see this, watching it unfold before my very eyes was far more difficult than I could bear to stomach. Sorrow found its place inside my heart, as if a piece of me had died alongside Kaoru. At the end, we were unable to come together. If only I could have known more about him. This regret would come to haunt me, I imagined, and I gritted my teeth as the reality took shape in my mind. Luckily, I had Okita to comfort me.
千鶴ちゃん
Okita called out to me, and I turned around.
千鶴、そこにいるのか。
I see tears, so I must have this one. Hopefully that's the correct button. It's the correct button, alright. Father, whose skin was as pale as what? Father, whose skin was as pale as a porcelain doll, also called out to me.
答えてあげなよ
My fear was that as soon as I would speak, I would begin to cry uncontrollably, but somehow I fought back the tide of tears and I answered him. Yes, Father, I am here.
そうか。
Father's brows widened in relief.
すまんな。こんなに近くにいるのに、お前の顔が見えん。
Without saying anything, I took hold of Father's hand. It was icy to the touch. He must have lost a significant amount of blood by now. His condition was critical enough that even if he were to receive medical attention, it would be too late.
千鶴、お前に伝えねばならんことがある。
Father, you're only going to tire yourself. Please, you don't need to strain yourself by talking.
いや、この体ではもう助からん。そんなことよりも、この地の清き水は落ち水を薄めることができる。
What?
その力を使えば、落ち水の毒をも浄化できるやもしれん。
With his very last bit of strength, he gave us a solution for which we had been searching all along.
お前の父親らしい行いが最後にできただろうか。
Father. Blood may have been thicker than water, but there was a bond between us that was unbreakable all the same. When I was still a young girl, I had memories of my kind father, carrying me on his back as we sped down the mountain trail. He will always be my father, no matter what, even if not by blood. This is a promise. You were the only father I ever had, the only man I am honored to give that distinction. Hearing my promise, Father smiled faintly. He drew one last breath, seemingly at peace. I braced myself to accept the loss of these men, but I did nothing to stifle my grief. Could anything? Kaoru, my estranged twin brother who died before either of us could get to know the other. Father, who always seemed to wish the best for me, even until his dying breath. These lamentable thoughts swirled tirelessly. Both of them were surely men that would impact my life for as long as I live. My promise to them, if I could, would be to preserve their memory. I will not let them go forgotten. Then Okita softly put his hand on my shoulder. He tenderly ran his fingers along the length of my scalp before patting me like he would a child.
泣いてもいいよ、千鶴ちゃん。
Okita. In the next moment, Okita wrapped his arms around my fragile frame, embracing me tightly. His body served as conduit, through which my inner frustrations were channeled and brought to the surface. Okita! Okita! Despite my relief in seeing Okita safe, having to come at the expense of my family gave me heartache. Would I ever be able to shake this remorse? In spite of my best efforts, I started bawling madly.
今日はよく頑張ったね。君は本当に強い子だ。剣じゃなくて心の強さだったら僕なんかよりずっと強くなっちゃったかもしれないね。
His method of comforting me was what one would likely expect when speaking with a child, but he still knew how to tell me what I needed to hear most. The fact alone that he wouldn't hold back the truth from me made my love for him burn even hotter, and my tears streamed without restraint. All right. Final chapter. The sky sparkled clearly, and besides us, there was a stream of pure water. As we found ourselves surrounded by a lush meadow and thick trees, our bodies began to feel a change. By the time the crescent moon had risen alongside a sea of stars, we could finally lay our heads at rest, and for once in a long while, we woke to a bright morning. Our lives were no longer constricted by our murderous thirst for blood, and we regained the peaceful lives for which we had pined for so long. Thankfully, we were still blessed with some of the heightened features that came with drinking the serum. Of course, there was things that hadn't changed at all. We were still us. Okita hadn't fully recovered from his tuberculosis. The illness still ate away at his body. But even so, I took solace that I could spend a day as delightful as today was with him. Okay. I'm sorry, I have to say that every time I see it. Because Chizuru is barely with her hair down ever. It's always tied in some way. Sure is beautiful, isn't it? I squinted as I turned my eyes towards the sunlight, and Okita let out a small chuckle.
そうだね。君と二人きりで日向ぼっこなんて最高の贅沢だ。
Sunlight, which had previously served as a painful curse to Furies, no longer burned our skin. All that changed is our aptitude for naps. So it became customary for us to fall asleep, soaking in the tender warmth of the summer sun. Feeling safe and snug beside Okita's comforting presence was a dream-like kind of bliss. Naturally, as I get a message on fucking Discord, naturally, I couldn't help but yawn. Okita, of course, laughed at the sight.
寝ちゃダメだよ。僕はまだ眠くないから。
But I'm tired already.
君が寝ちゃったら退屈だし、もう少し僕の相手をしてよ。
Hey. I rubbed my aching eyelids softly.
好きだよ、千鶴。
Huh?
君のことが好きだよ。誰とも比べられないぐらい。
Okita reached out to grab me into a tight hug, and he muttered this softly into my ear. As the sensation of his breath tingled my earlobe, suddenly I felt my cheeks blush hotly. That's not fair.
ずるいって何が？僕は自分の気持ちを正直に言っただけだけど。
His fondness for poking fun at me was something he'd likely never let go for as long as we were together. Aww. At first, my expression was pouty, but I couldn't keep from bursting into laughter. Perhaps it was because for once, we could savor this moment without worry.
君は僕のこと好き？
His question was hushed, as if he were telling me an intimate secret. Then he gazed deeply into my eyes. Well, yes.
はいじゃなくて、君の気持ちをちゃんと言葉で聞かせて。
Okita was grinning impishly, but I took it to mean he was eager to hear my words of affection. Every time he asked me for my feelings, he demanded an immediate answer. He valued my opinion, and he craved my validation. Knowing this to be the case, I felt compelled to give him as honest of an answer as I could. I love you, Soji. More than anything. I saw Okita's face beam with excitement. Watching his cheeks puff happily made me blush harder.
そっか。ありがとう、千鶴。
He wrapped his long, slender fingers around mine. However, he was grasping it more tightly than usual, leading me to wonder. Soji?
忘れないで。僕はいつだって君の幸せを願ってる。
His words were like honey, soft and gooey, but sweet all the same. Excuse me for a second as I shiver at the thought of something gooey on my hands. Yeah. I don't want that. I'll take the soft bit, just leave out the gooey.
君が寂しくないよ。僕はできる限りのことをするから。だから、どうか。
I inched closer to him, anxious about letting any amount of space between us go unfilled. Okita seemed a tad nervous about our future. I, too, was nervous about what the future could hold for the two of us. I'm going to be okay. He held his hand delicately in mine. You complete me, Soji. Because of him, everything that had happened these past years was worth it. I was able to fall in love. You bring me a joy I never knew existed. I don't think I'd feel lonely if I tried. His sad, emotional eyes thinned, and he squeezed a smirk from his lips. After a moment, he wrapped his arms, pulling me in closer to his large, muscular frame.
君のことが心から愛おしい。
He spoke as if uttering a vow.
だから信じて。たとえいつか離れる時が来ても、僕の心は永遠に君のものだ。
His emerald's eyes twinkled as he smiled. Then he shut his eyes. His embrace loosened as if only slightly, and he let out a small sigh. Soji? At first, no answer. I suppose he'd spent enough energy making his feelings for me known and he dozed off. Or perhaps the sun's worth made a nap quite the proposition. You just said you weren't tired. I giggled to myself. What was I going to do with him? But I put my lips right beside his ear. I feel the same way about you too. Whatever he had been dreaming must have been a pleasant one as his lips curled into a smile. Even if one day they tear me away from you. I mouthed his words slowly, letting them seep into my heart. My heart belongs to you, eternally. May this warmth live forever. May his arms forever find comfort in my embrace. I whispered these prayers softly to myself, and I shut my eyes in concentration. If he were to wake up, I'm sure that this time he would hear it. I will say it over and over, so that he will never doubt my words of love. Oyasumi, Soji. So until then, sleep well, my love. Okay, that was cute. That was cute. Ugh. Somewhere in the top 6. That's it. That's it. What do you mean the achievement is called the Cough of the Shinsengumi? What do you mean? That's the name of the